Patterson, lifelong cross-cultural missions worker and trainer. I'd like to welcome you to this interview today with Barry and Rowena McKnight. They are old friends of ours with whom Ross and I have significant history. Barry and Rowena worked for many years in Thailand in a variety of different mission roles and have also been involved in training of different kinds, including cross-cultural training, both for Thai nationals and also for other nationalities, for those wanting to work in the region. So we have great admiration and respect for them both. Just to say before we begin, this is the next in a series of interviews we have filmed, which you can find on our website, FieldPartner.org, or on our YouTube channel, and now also as a podcast on all major platforms. Do like and subscribe to any of these channels and to our Facebook page to stay up to date with our latest resources. FieldPartner is an online community and resource for Christian cross-cultural workers at any stage of their journey. Okay, so let's begin. Thank you both so much. It's a pleasure to see you again, and I've been looking forward to doing this interview with you.
Thank you, Christine.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's start with your roots, with your backgrounds.
Okay, well, hello. I'm going to start off. I come from a military family. My dad was in the army, and so basically I was born in a small village near where he was posted, and we don't really have any roots in one particular place. And so all through my childhood, we moved around and every 2 or 3 years, and I had time at boarding school, and my teenage years were split between Singapore and Germany. So, and my family weren't Christians at all, so we never went to church. And then when I got to the end of my schooling, I felt that I wanted to do nursing. And so I applied to a hospital in London and got accepted to do my nurse's training at St. Bartholomew's Hospital.
Right.
And in my first month there, I had decided that I would try going to church, but there wasn't really any church that I knew about. But one of our sister tutors who was training us was, apparently she was a Christian, because the other people in my group said, watch out for her, she's religious. I didn't really know what they meant. But after a month, I just knew that I wanted to talk to her. And so one day I went to her and knocked on her door, and I said, can you help me? And basically sort of thinking maybe I had a question about my studies, but I went in to see her, and I can't remember what happened in there, but I came out a Christian. and it completely changed my life. And I was just so excited, and I started reading the Bible, and then throughout my whole training I got involved with the Christian Union, which was very mission orientated, because we had lots of mission doctors and nurses who had trained there and gone out to the mission field. And so gradually through that time I became interested in mission, and as I prayed, I felt God leading me towards Asia, and I read books. I read Hudson Taylor's biography, and really felt that God was calling me to mission. And I started getting the magazine of the Overseas Missionary Fellowship, and I went to different conferences. And by the time I got to the end of my training, I knew that God was calling me to do mission, and specifically felt that I would be going to Thailand. Right. And from there, when I left, finished my training and had worked as a nurse for 2 or 3 years in different situations, I applied to go to All Nations Training College, right, to train further in mission. So.
Over to Barry then.
Well, I was born in Bradford, Yorkshire, and like Rowena, my parents are not Christians, but I was sent to Sunday school when I was quite small, probably to get me out of the way and give my parents some peace. But I had that background, also boys' brigade, so I had some churchy background. And but it was when I joined the army. I was bored. My job wasn't going well, so I gave up a job, and I went into the army, signed on for the army. And it was whilst I was in Germany, I felt my life was going nowhere. I mean, I was just a lost, confused young soldier, 20 years old. My life was spiraling downward, and drinking too much, and I didn't have any answers. And I met a man who was part of my team, actually, who seemed to have it all together. He was very, very happy and content, had a lovely family. And I said, what's with you? What was different? And he said, what's made the difference? He said, Jesus. And I laughed. And I said, no, don't give me that religious stuff. I've given that up because it didn't work. And he said, no, you don't understand. It's not religion, it's about Jesus. And he said, I challenge you to come and study the Bible with me. Wow. And find out more, because I had lots of questions. Why was I on earth? What was I doing here? What was the point of life? There's no point in life. And so I started studying the Bible, and God started working in my life. One evening I felt really under conviction, and I had to do something. And I walked out of the bar when I was in communication. My job was communication during the day, but I worked in a bar in the evenings, and I just walked out and I said to the other soldiers, I said, this is it, I'm not coming back. I walked over to the chapel on the camp on my own there in that chapel, and I had an amazing encounter with God. I can't explain it, but I came out of that place. It wasn't a vision, it wasn't an audible voice or anything, but I just knew the presence of God in such a powerful way, and I gave my life over to God. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know you had to pray a sinner's prayer or anything. I knew nothing, but I came out of that chapel really as a new person. I mean, things changed so radically that my friend said, what's happened to you? I mean, you're not swearing, you're not getting drunk every night, you're not, you've changed. So then I started my life's work of introducing people to Jesus.
But then did you land up at All Nations as well? Is that where you were in
the army? It was good time in the army. I learned a lot. I read a lot. It was through reading Hudson Taylor's biography, like Rowena, that I felt a call to mission. Right. And so when I left the army, I was in contact with Overseas Missionary Fellowship, the OMF, the agency we went out with, and they advised me to go to All Nations and to prepare myself in that way. And I met Rowena there, and within 9 months we were married.
Brilliant. So then, I was going to say, preparing to go, like, unlike Ross and me, you two really did get the works in terms of mission training. And you also, as you just said, went to Thailand via the classic route with an excellent agency. So tell us about not only the training, the orientation, but also the early days on the field. How long did you spend in language study, and how valuable was that whole foundation for your future effectiveness?
Okay, well, Barry actually was a year ahead of me at All Nations, and we got married at the end of my first year. So we stayed at All Nations for another 6 months, and then had 6 months working with Barry's home church. And throughout that whole time, we were in touch with Overseas Missionary Fellowship and preparing to go out with them. And we went through the candidate procedure and application, and were accepted by them as missionaries. And so at the end of our 6 months with Barry's home church, we went to Singapore first and did orientation for 3 months, 2 months.
10 weeks. 10 weeks.
And so can I interrupt that? So the orientation was into general Asian culture or specific?
Yes. So we got to, we were orientated kind of into the mission and into general Asian culture. And we were with a group of 19 other missionaries, well, all of us 19, and we were all going to different countries in Asia.
Okay.
So from that was a really valuable time and sort of set us on the right road. And then from there we went to Thailand, and we had our first year in Bangkok, and it was just completely set aside for us to learn the language and do orientation. And so we lived with other missionaries and in Bangkok and went to a local language school. And it was just so valuable. The whole program was, we had the language school, which was excellent, but it was constantly backed up by experts in the mission who kept us going and helped us with problems that we might be having. And so we had that whole year in Bangkok. And but that wasn't the end of our language study. At the end of the year, we did an exam, and then we went down to the place where we were going to be working, and we continued in part-time work and in language study part-time. And we were never let off the hook. We had to finish our language study. And so it basically was a 3-year course, but the second and third year were part-time.
Okay. So just to follow up on that, what would you say to people who think that you can start off just by preaching with interpretation rather than actually getting stuck into language? What would be as the value of the way you did it?
Well, from our experience, when we first started learning the language, we actually weren't allowed to speak through interpretation.
Right.
I think we were only allowed to give our testimony once through an interpreter, but if we couldn't say it, we didn't say it. Okay. And for us in our situation, I personally felt that was the best way to go. And I mean, all through our time, we have actually heard some very bad interpretation, because knowing the language and then hearing it being interpreted. And so I would recommend that people really got stuck into the language and didn't use interpreters.
Okay, good. Barry, how about you? What's your view on that?
Well, I really found language study quite difficult, which surprised me. I did French and German at school and did quite well, but I found it quite difficult. And I think one of the reasons was the tones. I just couldn't get the tones. So one day in desperation, I went to the language supervisor, missionary language supervisor, and I said, I've got a problem with tones here. I can't continue it like this. And she called over the Thai assistant, you know, the actually Thai lady who ran this language school, and she said, we'll give you a test. And after the test, they looked at me and smiled and said, you definitely do have a problem here. So this is what we recommend. And they gave me lots of drills to do, like 5 tones. So it was listening to a high tone next to a low tone with a medium tone and a rising tone, and all these drills that I had to listen to hour after hour. I just listened, and it nearly drove me crazy. Yeah. But I got a breakthrough, and I never looked back. And I didn't have problem with tones after that. If I did make a mistake, I knew immediately and corrected it. So I would have had to go home if I hadn't had that break. So I would say, get help. If you do find weaknesses, you do find. And another thing I would say, try and eliminate all your foreignness. We've heard people speak Thai, and you could tell whether they were Geordies or whether they were from Liverpool, or they're from Scotland, or whether they're from the States or Australia, through their accent. And we said, no, we don't want this. I don't want to speak Thai with a Yorkshire accent. I want to try and eliminate as much foreigners as I can, and try and speak like the Thai. So that was a real challenge.
Just a couple more things. When I think it's a challenge when we're going out as missionaries and you feel you've really got something to give and you've got the knowledge, but it's so important to be a learner.
Right.
When you're going into a new
culture as well, yeah.
Be a learner, ask questions, and don't be afraid of not knowing. And also, I think, learning the language is so important, but also learning the culture.
Right.
And so, because they go hand in hand, it really does help you to understand and get to know the people and be involved with local people. Spend time with them, ask questions, do simple things.
That's right. Yeah, we did have Thai friends that we used to go out with and do things with, and that really, really helped.
That's great. So then you got into various different seasons of service. Your call was to Thailand, but not necessarily to one organization or denomination, or even one kind of work. So can you briefly talk us through the different kinds of work that you were involved with once you got the language down, and what you learned from each one?
Okay, well, our first 10 years were actually with OMF, and we were doing church planting. And when we moved to the south of Thailand, we were never left totally on our own. We did work under a senior missionary, and we had a lot of encouragement and help, even at that time.
Right.
And so we did two 4-year terms of with OMF, and that was amazing. We helped to church plant in the village, and then we started a church in the border town with Malaysia, and it was a really good time, and we enjoyed it. It wasn't always easy. We were on our own most of the time, and in those days there was no internet or anything, so it was a challenge. But that was a good time. And then after our 10 years with OMF, we actually left the mission, and then we went
to work with the national church. So originally we were pioneering, and then we went to work with a national church under a national church, and then we were working alongside nationals, Thai nationals, training them to do church planting. So we've had the whole range of experience of pioneering on our own, handing over to nationals, handing over churches that we planted to nationals, to Thai pastors, and then working with a national church, showing them, going with them, helping them do the job of church planting, which is much easier. And then it's on that foundation of being national church right from the start. And then I did other things. I wrote a whole series of Bible reading notes in Thai, because there was such a dearth of materials in those days. They didn't have Bible study materials. So they said, well, if you want them, you have to write them. So I did. I didn't know I could do that, but I did that on a range of New Testament epistles and proper Bibles, daily Bible study notes that people could go through each day, and I taught them how to do it. And that was a really, really helpful in the church planting program. And then I taught at a few Bible seminaries, Bible schools, and then got in touch. And then we were involved with training missionaries, new missionaries who didn't come out with an organization, came out independently. And of course, they didn't know the language. So Rowena helped set up a language school program for them, trained a Thai pastor's wife to teach them how to learn Thai. And that was great. And Rowena did an amazing job. And then we do orientation with them, and then we teach them how to do church planting and how to function as missionaries on the field. So we did that too. And then I helped other missionaries with their work. I went around the country doing leadership training weekends, and then special meetings in the evening, and evangelistic meetings in the evening, and that sort of thing. And the odd trip overseas, went to Sri Lanka to help train some church planters, and it was just a good time with a lot of variety.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, we got involved with the juniper tree.
Right.
We had 2 years with the National Church, but then after that we moved to the town where the juniper tree was, Hua Hin, on the coast. And for the first 4 years, actually, we got involved locally with the church. And by then we had 4 children, and I had been doing homeschool and was still doing homeschool. And we used to go down to the juniper tree, and we knew the lady who ran it. And I, for the first...
Juniper tree is?
Yeah, explain what it is.
Oh, sorry. The juniper tree is a holiday retreat center and it was for missionaries all over Asia.
Right.
And they came from different countries, and they were working in different countries, and they would come for a break and a holiday.
Including us. We'll come to that.
The lady who ran it, she ran the juniper tree along with 15 Thai staff, but she never took any time off. And so I actually offered her a day off a week, which she grudgingly accepted. But and so I used to go up and help with the juniper tree just one day a week. And then after that, she had to go away she was in her 70s, and she had to go to have a operation on her eyes. And it actually had complications, and she was never able to come back and work. Mm. And so I was the only one who knew how to run the juniper tree. Mm. And so basically we landed on a series of weeks, we moved into the juniper tree and took it over and ran it for the next 4 years. Right. And so that was an amazing time.
Yeah. And for our own personal history, it was very significant because we, just at the time that we most needed it, we got you welcomed us to come down at your busiest time over Christmas, and we were very, very grateful.
So that was quite significant for us, really. Over Chinese New Year, we'd just block it off and have people who were working, expats who were working in China, come over, and we'd put on special things, special meals, special seminars if they wanted, and worship, and it was just so good for them to come for 2 or 3 weeks and relax totally, and also we had people who came who were burned out really and thinking of leaving the field, and we were able to help them and pray with them and build them up, and they went back to the field, and some of them are still there. We're still in contact with them, and it was such a blessing. And we had some kind of renewal meetings around the time of what they call the Toronto Blessing. You may remember that, Christine.
I do.
Ross came, didn't you, at that time? And it was such a blessing, and we ran a Sunday meeting as well with people from every denomination and every background and countries and language and nationality. It was quite an exciting church to run.
So by then you had all 4 kids were obviously born by then. And so the next question I was going to ask was about education, because I mean that having kids on the field brings its own challenges, how to keep them safe, and all the different aspects of especially yours with blondish red hair. There must have been a real oddity in Thailand, and would attract attention, that kind of thing. But I mean, then the main thing is how to make sure they get a good education. You've already said you did homeschooling. So why don't you talk about the different kinds of education that was involved in that?
Yes, well, when our first one was born, Esther, we were still in OMF. And at that time, OMF had a boarding school in Malaysia for for elementary school children. And they went there from when they were 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of never really questioned it. But when Esther was 6 years old, she actually went to Shifu in Malaysia, in the Cameron Highlands, and she was there for a year. And it was very hard, and it was hard seeing her go. But she enjoyed it, and we've been able to talk about it since. But she actually only did 1 year, because after that we left OMF, and so we were on our own. And when we came back to Thailand after leaving OMF, we made decisions of what to do. And I felt strongly that I wanted to keep the children on the British system of education, so that for their future they would have opportunities that they could choose. And so we found a correspondence course from England, and we had the materials sent out. And so for the next, over a period of 6 years, I homeschooled.
Rowena. 6 years of homeschooling, my goodness.
For the time when we were in Bangkok with the National Church, I had our youngest, who was 1 year old, and then the other three who were all at different stages of their junior school education.
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm just so thankful it worked, and they did very well. Right. And from there, I better sorry, just jump back a bit. Esther actually had a year and a half in England with a family in our church, because I only homeschooled them up to the end of their junior school education, up to the year 6. So when it got to year 7 or grade 7, we had to think again. And so she actually had a year and a half in England when we were in Thailand.
Right.
And she would come out for the holidays. And that wasn't an easy time. It wasn't an easy time for her. But then at the end of that time, we had moved into the juniper tree, and it was getting to our next one, Pete's time for year 7. And we were praying about what to do. And we heard about this school in India, boarding school, which was a kind of Christian international school. And we prayed about it, and didn't quite know what to do. So we wrote to the principal, and we discovered that we had actually been at at Bible school with him.
Right.
And as well as that, I knew his wife before she married him, because we did beach missions together when I was nursing.
Oh.
So they said, send your children. And so we actually, over the next few weeks, we prayed about it with the children, talked to them, tried to find out as much information, and went to visit a missionary in Thailand who had had children there. And so our 3 older children went to Hebron, and they loved it.
Right. Okay, so then that became the bridge for us when we visited, and you opened the door for us to at least introduce, for us to send our kids there as well, but only for a briefer time. And I think it was perhaps less ideal for us. But there we go. I mean, sometimes you do what you feel God is calling you to do, and then you have to just leave the results to Him, don't you?
Yes.
And trust that all of it is part of the journey. Anyway, but it was fantastic when we started, and under Rod and Ruthie, it was just great for the kids.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm glad that yours had such a good time there. So anyway, as well as Thailand, it seems that there was another nation that the Lord had particularly laid on your heart, Barry, and that is where we also had begun to come into the picture. So tell us about the trips that you started making into China.
Yes. Well, I said at the beginning, I got my call from reading Hudson Taylor's biography, so immediately I wanted to leave the army and go to China and become a missionary. But it was during the years of the Cultural Revolution, and you couldn't go to China. So that's one of the reasons why we went to Thailand. And we worked with for a while with the Chinese Fellowship in Bradford too. But yes, when we're back in England, we went back for 5 years because we wanted to see the children start university, or 2 of them anyway, and then the third one. And so whilst we were there, one time you were there in New York, and you organised a meeting, a prayer meeting, and you asked me if I would take part, and I said yes, but you wanted me to actually host the Australian director of the mission, and which I was willing to do and happy to do. And he stayed with us, and then we brought him to York for the day. And I think it was a setup, actually. I think you had something more in mind than just me helping on that day, one day, because we got on really well with, I call him Jack.
Yeah.
And it was great to be able to hear what he was doing in intercession teams in northwest China with a particular group, and I just felt, wow, I'd love to do that. And as it worked out, I had an invitation to go on a summer team, intercession team, to go out to China. And I felt that was really of God. And I remember when I stepped into China, tears were just rolling down my cheeks. I felt so emotional. And the reason being, I'd prayed for China for 30 years, exactly to the year, 30 years for China. And now I was there. And it was so emotional, so moving. And that led to going on many, many trips, and also going in to do pastoral work with students and things. So, yeah, I mean, that was a tremendous turnaround for us.
Right. And then, so that also led to something where you were tremendous help to us, because you started training people for us who were going to land up in China. So why don't you talk about that as well? Because I think in your book you speak of having had, was it a prophetic word or just some advice? Where they said you should be a trainer of others, especially leaders.
Yeah, that was interesting, because I realised I'd just done about everything that missionaries do, in the church planting sense. I'd been evangelist, pastor, and so I didn't know what direction my life was going in the future. I'd done some leadership training too. So one day I went to see this very wise church leader I had great respect for, and I laid it out before him. I said, I've done pastoral work, but I don't want to be a pastor. I've taught in Bible schools, but I don't want to work full-time in a Bible school. And he started laughing. He said, it's easy. He said, God wants you to be a trainer. You've had so much experience in different fields, different areas of ministry. You've got to raise up people who can do that job. And I said, thank you, Lord. And I never looked back.
Right.
Trained church planters. We did the Antioch School of Mission in Chiang Mai and trained people for mission.
Right. And I think your I mean, as much as anything, that your life as a couple, as a family, that kind of was part of the training. Because Rowena, you were the hostess, but you showed tremendously what hospitality was all about. And then that was doing all the teaching, or orchestrating the teaching. So great.
Absolutely.
Well, we had them living in our house with us, and so that was a challenge for them and a challenge for us as well. But we didn't have any helpers in the house, and so everyone had a job to do. And I got the students involved in helping in the kitchen as well, so they would take it in turns and make the main meal of the day with me. And so in that way they were learning how to cook in an Asian kitchen, and how to use different things that they'd never met before. And as well as that, I took them on trips around the local markets and helped them to just understand what it was like going shopping every day and buying in the local market. And I know that actually really helped quite a few of them in their time when they moved into China.
Yeah, I think another factor in running the school, it wasn't just academic, it wasn't just learning from books and reading and that, but it was also, I'd take them out on field trips so they could get experience. They got involved in local church and cell groups and things. But it was for us, it was a matter of not just learning how to do things, but it was attitudes, it was character building. It was, this is what we felt were important things, and growing in the Lord spiritually and worshiping together and learning to work together as a team. And it was a holistic kind of experience, not just an academic kind of school.
So that was a whole 5 years, I think you did that for us.
5 years.
You owe you tremendous debt. Because, I mean, then we migrated the school inside China, but you carried on going inside, Barry, to help with the teaching for a while.
Yes.
Yeah. So now, I mean, I know you went on and did other things in Thailand afterwards, but just from our point of view with FieldPartner, we're fully aware that we can't replicate the experience that you gave people in your own home training like you did. But, you know, what would you feel would be the things that, you know, having a school online to have, you know, where would you think the shortfall would be by not having the...
To be honest, I'm not really sure. I mean, it's such an amazing course. I've looked at it and I'm thinking, oh, you've got everything. you've really done a lot of work and a lot to offer in the course. I'm sure I can find a gap there to slot something.
I mean, one of the ones that I'm very aware of is orientation, you know, so because we can't orientate to a particular culture. So that would be something that would be useful to sort of build up a whole resource of, you know, different major cultures and introduction to the other religions and so on. But I think, you know, maybe one thing would be people doing what you did, hosting, just getting the teaching online, but hosting in their own homes or in small groups, that kind of thing.
I think it is. Coaching is the way to go. I mean, we've done that, as I say, on the field, but it's still important, and we could do some of that online as well. So I think that's maybe an area that I can help.
And I mean, you went out and learned things like debriefing, for example. So
yes.
That's another thing which people can, as a skill that's actually not very difficult because you just need to be a listener. But it's the kind of, you know, a skill that people need to understand the value of.
Yeah. That's true. Re-entry is a big thing, and people don't realize, you know, how important it is for people coming back to their home country. They need help with that. So re-entry is a big thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so we're looking forward to seeing how we can collaborate in the future. See how it pans out, because we'd love to tap into your experience even more than we have. And I mean, I don't know, you may say no to this, but I mean, if anybody wanted to read your book, would there be a way that they could get hold of it?
Well, I think they would have to write to me and introduce themselves to me, and I see where they are and what, you know. And yes, I am. I haven't published it because I don't want it publishing. It's a family. It's for family. It's for friends. It's for people who supported it on the field for 40 years. I mean, it's for close friends. It's some of my students. I'm not trying to keep it secret, but I don't want it. I don't want it to go everywhere. It's a special book.
Well, I mean, the value of the stories is what really impacts me.
Yes.
You know, I'm still cleaning the stories out of the book, and so I think, you know, some of those stories would be really worth sharing. I mean, the cultural insights. So,
yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you both so much. And yeah, we look forward to seeing how this all pans out.
Yeah.
But anyway, the title of the book, which I think sums up the way that that Barry is Life is Not Boring. And that would be your summation of your life on the field. Is that not so? That life is not boring.
No, definitely not.
In 3 parts as well.
Right. Okay. So, well, thank you so much, both of you, for having this time with me. And it's been such a joy to chat. It's given us much food for thought. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining us. And if you've enjoyed this interview, then please spread the word on social media or by sending it to a friend. And why not go across to FieldPartner.org and find out how much else we have to offer. So bye-bye for now, and God bless.